Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show, Red Pill Edition. My name is Leon Jones, and I'm going to get right to the topic. And I'm going to talk about the coronavirus. Don't be a guinea pig to the coronavirus. Don't be a guinea pig to the coronavirus. Now, in this video, it's going to sound like I'm all over the place. But what I'm doing, I'm giving you different examples of the kinds of tests that they're trying to pull on the American people. Now, why am I saying all this? Because I believe two things are happening. Number one, I see depopulation. And number two, I see the loss of freedom. Now, America is known as a democratic republic. Now, if you look politically, when it comes to liberalism, there are two types of liberalism. There's classic liberalism and there's progressive liberalism. Now, we haven't seen classic liberalism in the past 50 to 60 years, because during the Vietnam era in the 1960s, more of your people who were avoiding the draft just to go to college came up with their different philosophies during the Vietnam era in the 60s. So they went more progressive. And the two professors that are or were involved in the changing of the system were Cloward and Pivens. Now, if you don't know who Cloward and Pivens were, look them up. But they were professors. I believe they attended Harvard University. One of them is still around. Now, the Cloward-Pivens theory was basically to collapse the welfare system. And once you collapse the welfare system, what do you have to do? You have to come up with something else. Well, if you look at what's going on right now with the coronavirus, it's not just collapsing the system. It's also the loss of freedom. You see, one thing that I've noticed when it comes to government tends to be hypocritical. Now, government put out this mandatory nationwide order for everybody to stay home. They couldn't be outside. All right. What does that do when you can't be out in the streets? Number one, you don't have the ability to go to work to make money, although you have individuals who are making money at home. In fact, when it comes to the economy, it's bad, but it's not as bad as you think. But there are certain sectors out there, particularly in the travel and the hospitality sector and the retail sector, they took hits. You also look at oil. The reason why gas is so low. Now, the last time I checked, it was $15 a barrel. It's probably lower than that. But when it comes to freedom, when you have to stay in, the government can push their radical agendas because nobody's out there protesting. See, what the government wants to do is to keep everybody stupid. But you see the folks in Michigan, and there are going to be more and more folks coming out to protest because Americans, for the most part, the thinking Americans, know what is going on. And when it comes to African American people, Governor Cuomo of New York told a big lie. He said there are a lot of African Americans out there on the front lines. which means they're out there as police officers, firemen, and working in the health field. Well, from what I saw, there are plenty of white folks, Latinos out there working as well. But see, what he didn't say is people who are dying aren't black people. They're elderly people. Now, some of them may be black, but a lot more of your elderly people are white. Now, in the cities, they are black because that's where most of your black people reside. But you don't hear him talking about suburbanite people. Now, I'm not going to make this video about a conspiracy, but I am going to make this video about our freedoms. Because when you halt the economy and you start giving out stimulus checks, now don't get me wrong, it's nothing wrong with getting help. But when I saw another proposal for $2,000 for 6 months, I believe that's Bernie Sanders who said that, that has me scratching my head. Now, why does it have me scratching my head? Because when I talk about being used as a guinea pig, they may use that as a test. Now, what kind of test is that? That test is to see if UBI works. Now, if you're not familiar with UBI, UBI stands for Universal Basic Income. It's another socialist program. And for my African American brothers and sisters, many of us believe in government too much. Government is not going to keep you free. Your thought process is going to keep you free. Your knowledge of what's going on is going to keep you free. Now, going to these masks out here, because I told you I was going to talk about different topics within being a test subject or being a guinea pig. When it comes to these masks, for the most part, these masks don't keep everything out. Now, it sounds good that they're getting all these ventilators, they're getting all these masks, and I see a lot of people running around looking at each other as if we're all sick. And if you go in a grocery store, some of them tell you you have to wear a mask. Well, I went into Walmart and I went into Myers and I didn't have a mask on. And the reason why I don't wear a mask is because I breathe natural air. In fact, if you look at some of your cities, and this is coming from a civil engineering perspective, you know why a lot of cities have trees? Well, trees emit that oxygen and we emit carbon dioxide. But when it comes to these masks only reduce the exposure to chemicals. That's why when you go into a confined space, you wear a mask. But there are a number of people who don't know how to don a mask properly. They don't understand how masks work. They don't understand how to fit masks. Now, these masks that you see that people are wearing right now, they're cheap masks. You have to continually change the mask because all you're doing when you wear a mask, you're not breathing naturally. Basically, you're inhaling your own germs. Remember something, the body is a chemical. And what's going on with our body is you got to look at what kind of immune system you have. Now, when it comes to any type of mask, you have to test it to make sure it fits properly. Now, I was in the Navy for 17 years, and we had a Mark V gas mask, and we had a canister. Now, in order for that mask to work properly, you had to seal the canister. And when you seal the canister, air does not come into the canister. In other words, the mask will squish right to your face. If it doesn't squish to your face, you have something wrong with that canister. But even if the mask fits properly, that canister must be changed. Also, when we fought fires in the Navy, I don't know if they have them anymore. It looked like a bulletproof vest. It was heavy. We had a canister. It was green. We put that canister inside what we call, at that time, it was an OBA, an oxygen breathing apparatus. We would turn it to 60 and back to 30 because we only had 60 minutes worth of oxygen. And when that ran out, we had to put another canister into our OBA. But again, that was to manually give us oxygen. But when you are in a confined space, you have to constantly change your masks. Because again, when you're dealing with chemicals, it doesn't mean that you don't smell the chemicals. All you're doing is reducing the exposure to the chemicals. And at the end of the day, it's individuals running around with masks, they're being controlled. They're being controlled because they don't know any better. They've been told that if they wear a mask, it protects them from getting sick. It does not. Having a good immune system protects you from getting sick. This is why I always say eat green vegetables. Take your vitamin C. Now, some people might thumb this video down, and anybody who thumbs the video down really isn't seeking the truth. They're in their feelings. And that's another thing that you want to raise when it comes to people. You want to keep them ignorant so their thinking becomes very emotional. Again, you're being a guinea pig. They're testing you to see if you're going to break. When it comes to standing in long lines at grocery stores, they're testing you to see if you're going to break, if you're going to war against each other. You see, the way the government can alleviate your freedoms is to have people warring against one another, putting out something that people are going to run with instead of fact-checking it. This is why I always tell you, you got to keep your eyes and ears open. Many of us are asleep at the wheel. Now, when it comes to the coronavirus, the people who are passing away at the greatest percentage are your elderly people. Now, it might not be the coronavirus that they're passing away from. It could be something else, but everybody keeps saying, oh, this is the coronavirus. Well, you look at Tom Hanks. He had the coronavirus. So they say, but he was fine. You look at Idris Elba. He had the coronavirus. He's fine. Did they really have the coronavirus? Were some of them paid to say they had the coronavirus? You don't know what's happening. And with this pandemic, there are a lot of pandemics. There are a lot of agendas that are going to be looked at. Even some conspiracy theories. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do know that there's a hidden agenda out here. Now, being used as a guinea pig is going to play in part to that hidden agenda. And I'm going to tell you what the hidden agenda is that I'm looking at. Okay, number one, making people stay home from work. Again, that's taking away a person's inability to make money for himself, create wealth for himself or herself. And at the end of the day, when it comes to freedom, because it's all about freedom, and what they want to do is take away your freedom. They want you to listen to what they say. You see, these government officials, when I look at all their press conferences, all the rules that they put out for us, they don't abide by. Now, what am I talking about? Well, the 10 people inside a compartment or a room, staying 6 feet away from one another and wearing masks. None of these individuals abide by. But they want us to abide by the laws. It's simply like the Social Security system. The government officials don't have the same Social Security system or health system that we have. So what the government wants to do with us is continue to make us their peons. Now remember something. The government and these corporations are in bed together. They support one another. Remember the politicians. They've been bought and paid for. But many of us are asleep at the wheel. We don't know that. And some do know that, but they're getting money from the government. And what the government wants us to do is be dependent on them. So when you hear them talk about vaccines, you got to understand what vaccine they're giving you. Now, my thing is, the government must approve all the drugs. But when it comes to any vaccine, I'm going to tell you this, or any test, don't take the test. Don't be used as a guinea pig. You know, when I was in the military, we had to take lots of needles. And remember, you had other, I don't want to call them pandemics or epidemics, but remember, you had tuberculosis. You have AIDS out there. Herpes. Nobody's jumping up and down for that. You had the swine flu. Ebola, E. coli, Salmonella, Spanish flu, West Nile virus, SARS, MERS. Our freedoms weren't taken away with those epidemics / pandemics. But why is it that the coronavirus is being used to take down the economy? Because see, when you don't have an economy, we must depend on government, some of us. Now there's some of us who are working. But what's going on now is the fact that our freedoms are being reduced. This is why you have people coming out now in states like Michigan. Because with the government, they believe one size fits all. What goes on in the city does not go on in the country because it's less people. People can't even go out to fish. They can't even go out to the campsites. And at the end of the day, something else is taking place. Let's throw depopulation in the mix. Well, if you ever want to take down a country and turn it into a communist regime or a socialist regime, what people do you kill off first? Yeah, you can kill off your rich people, but that's not going to happen. You want to kill off the people who are draining the system. For the most part, They're going to be your elderly folk, and then your low income folk, because these individuals depend on government resources. Then after that, you're going to take away your smart people who know what's going on. In other words, the people you want to control are your ignorant people. You do that through media. You do that through education. You do that through religion. You even do that with policies on your job. And you do that with government. Those are the 5 power conferences of society that I've talked about in past videos. But what's going on right now with this coronavirus, not saying it's not real, but they're giving you all this information that's going to distract you. They're even telling you that 5G and the coronavirus go hand in hand. There's no proof that 5G and the coronavirus are going hand in hand. And I'm going to repeat myself again. I remember when I was told cell phones give you brain cancer. You don't hear about that anymore. But the real agenda here is to reduce your freedoms, your freedom of speech, your freedom to make money. They want you dependent on government. That's what they want you to be dependent on. And at the end of the day, government is not going to save you. As individuals, you need to know your rights out here. Too many of us are watching and we're running with what we believe on TV. The mainstream media is going to tell you what they want you to hear. And at the end of the day, many of you people who run with it and don't fact check it, you're going to end up being guinea pigs. You see, I see a number of people also who don't have masks on. Again, masks aren't going to save you. They're going to give you, in situations, some oxygen to breathe based off that apparatus that you're using. And they're going to reduce exposure to chemicals. I know I've had to wear masks and different respiratory apparatuses in confined spaces. But at the end of the day, when it comes to wearing a mask, you got to change it. You got to change the canister that goes with that mask. People out here aren't understanding the real truth. Now, there are a number of truths out there, but the bottom line is, the big truth is freedom. When they're telling me I can't go where I want to go, or they're going to put a fine on me, or they have a curfew. Some states have a curfew. We have to wait for the government to open up the country. They're dictating to us how we're supposed to live our lives. Meanwhile, they're living their lives the way they want to live their lives. Again, they're not wearing masks. They're not staying 6 feet away from other people. In fact, the president said he's not going to wear a mask. I don't see the governor of New York wearing a mask. I don't see the governor of Michigan wearing a mask. But yet, they have the nerve enough to tell us that we should wear a mask. And you have all of these companies out there. I know GM, particularly the GM plant, because I live in Indiana, and Kokomo, went from producing transmissions to ventilator systems. Now again, if you want to reduce the population in any country, you kill off the most vulnerable people. But you take the weakest people and you put fear in them. That's how you decrease the population. Look what Margaret Sanger did when she came up with Planned Parenthood, put that in black communities. Well, that was done for a reason. Because the more black babies aborted, again, when you abort a lot of black babies, that's potential scholars, police officers, engineers that you could have had who could have made a difference. But people aren't seeing it that way. Individuals only go by what they hear on television. But I'm going to tell you, when the summertime comes and you have individuals still stuck in the house, they're going to go to war against the government. And you even have the state of Virginia and some other states. They don't want to deal with the Second Amendment. And all these policies are taking place during this coronavirus. Why? Because when you keep the people out of harm's way, you can sneak in policies that are going to take away more and more freedoms. And you have too many people out here who believe in government. Government is supposed to protect your rights. So now when it comes to this coronavirus, in my humble opinion, they're hidden agendas. And these agendas are right in front of us, and many of us don't even know it. Wearing these masks out here, they make us look like communist China. Going to every grocery store, everybody has a mask on. We look at each other as if we are sickly. We can't talk to each other. We can't hug each other. We have to sanitize everything. These are things you should be doing every day anyway. But when it comes to individuals that are dying of the coronavirus, these are individuals who have had a lot of health problems. Now, there are exceptions to the rule because you had some younger people dying, but it's mostly older people who are dying. Again, because older people had been in and out of the hospital, in and out of the doctors. Now, the people who are on the front lines, I know from what Governor Cuomo said, he tried to say there were black people. No, it's a number of people who are out there doing their work every day in the health fields. Yes, they're wearing masks. You have your police, you have your firemen. They're not all black. I know he's trying to target black people. But again, for individuals who live in African American neighborhoods, don't let them come in there and give you a bunch of tests. Because what they want to do, they want to try to use you as an experiment. Look at the Tuskegee experiment. Look at the experiment that they used in Philadelphia at I believe it was the Homestead prison, or the homespun prison. Look what they did to the kids over there in New Jersey. It was a doctor, because I took a class at Temple. He said, come to Penn. I got plenty of skin. In other words, he was using prisoners to experiment solving different sicknesses by injecting viruses in them, by cutting them up. Same with the Tuskegee experiment. But individuals don't understand what's going on because they don't read. So my observation, I'm going to tell you this. What's really going on here is they want to take away your freedoms. They want to take your rights to speak. They want to take your rights to make money. They want you dependent on them. That's why you hear things in the background like universal basic income. This is why you got to fact check everything. This is why you cannot depend on government handouts. Because once they give you something, they're going to take something away from you. Everything that the government does is not for you. It's for their own agenda. But at the end of the day, you look at your government officials and other high officials. See if they're wearing masks. See if they're applying the same rules to you. See if they're living the same type of lifestyle as you. They're not. You're the peasant. That's how they treat you. The government officials work for us. But I guarantee you, look at all the press meetings. They're not abiding by the same policies they're telling us to do. You see, the way to control people is to keep people ignorant. And what's going on right now, they want to take away our freedoms. They really want to depopulate the country. Again, they're using Cloward and Pivens. What Cloward and Pivens does is take the system and they overwhelm the system like the welfare system. And once they overwhelm it, they come up with something else. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic, our freedoms are at stake. So at the end of the day, what we have to do as American citizens is continue to understand that government works for us. We don't work for them. Remember, it's all about freedom. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And please check out my other channel, The Mind of STEM, where I give you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. You can also check out my Blog Talk radio show. I talk about different topics as well. But I'm going to leave you with this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. I thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. I want to say, have a pleasant, wonderful, and blessed day. God bless you. My name is Leon Jones. I'm out.